From Trimble Construction, you're listening to the Connected Construction Show, where we connect you to the contractors, owners, designers, engineers, and construction professionals who are finding better ways to work. And now, here's your host, Matt Sprague.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Connected Construction Show. As always, I'm your host, Matt Sprague. Happy to have everybody back. Extremely happy and excited to have my friend Trisha Stefanski from the Minnesota Department of Transportation joining us today. Trisha is an asset management engineer for the DOT. Trisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So, diving right into it, anybody who listens to the show knows we follow kind of like a formula here. This is the get to know you moment of the show. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do at the Minnesota Department of Transportation, but even better, like how'd you get there?
Well, first of all, I have to tell the audience that I do not have a Minnesota accent. So there might be certain words. It's very obvious I do. But I live in the Twin Cities, so the cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, we call the Twin Cities area. I live there with my family. We have a couple of kiddos. We have a dog, a black lab. She's very sweet. And we have a corn snake. And the corn snake is getting pretty big. So I was thinking at times when I do these things, I could just have the corn snake behind me, and it would make things more interesting.
Wrap it around.
Just wrap it around. Just have it crawling all over. It's a very nice snake. It's a female, and my son wants to have babies with it. So we do enjoy, I think, the land of 10,000 lakes. We have a lake just right outside my window. We do a lot of skating, and we do a lot of swimming and boating, there's the word, in the summertime. And so I am a civil engineer by trade, and I grew up on a farm in central Minnesota, and I think that kind of contributed to me and my career path. And at MnDOT, I am the Asset Management Program Director. And I'm just getting used to that title because we had the previous AMPO director retired. So I just have taken on that role, but I really like it.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So take us a little bit back to the beginning. How did you get started in asset management and in really how did you essentially, I'm assuming you kind of followed your passions.
Yeah, totally. And I just, again, think back to the farm life, which I did not like when I was living on the farm. And my dad was like, come on, let's go pick rock. I mean, it's the hottest day of the summer. Let's go. Here's the wagon. I'm like, how do we pick rock? You throw rocks in a wagon. But he taught me a lot, I think, about working hard, about math, about land management, topography, those types of things. And he also was an organic farmer. So I think a lot about the environment and sort of how our decisions impact the environment. And I decided to be an engineer. I had a great math teacher in high school. And throughout my career, I have worked in all facets of public and private engineering. And so I usually like to say that, just this broad range of background. So I actually worked for a city, a county. I worked at a consulting company. I had my own business for a while. And now I'm at the state of Minnesota, and this is the best job that I've had so far, but gives me a really broad background of assets, asset design, construction, all those things. And then in 2009, I started my career path at MnDOT, and I was hired on temporarily. Lucky they kept me. Didn't know for sure if they would, but they did. And I was doing a sign inventory project at the time, and I did not realize how complicated signs were. So, anything from visual nighttime, retroreflectivity to the kind of the complexities of different sign types and installation. And I really started to like it then. In 2014, the Obama legislation on MAP 21 came out and the asset management plans were required. And so then in 2015, we actually, my predecessor boss created our asset management office. And we're in the planning division. We have 9 staff, and 3 of those are embedded IT, which have been, really, I think, made us more successful. And my own passions, though, like getting to my passions. So I was thinking about this a lot. I mean, because you just don't kind of live every day, do the things you do. But my passions are red wine and home improvement. And they can't be at the same time. Like, don't do that at the same time. So keep those separate.
They could be in sequence, though.
In sequence. Great in sequence. But for real, data, I'm really data-driven, love data, love analytics, maps, GIS, business process improvements, and innovation. So those are my passions, and those have definitely kind of gotten me to where I am today.
Okay. I promised you I was going to go on tangents. So this is my first tangent from our pre-show meeting to now.
Okay.
So it dawned on me. So we have a wide base of listeners, right? So we're not talking just to an asset management crew of people.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of maybe bubble it up a little bit real quick from a DOT's perspective. Just give us a little like asset management 101. What are the assets that you manage? Like specific.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And there was a term that I remember when I first kind of started dabbling in this space. This one threw like me a curveball. But what is furniture? I was like, when it came to departments of transportation and furniture, I was like, y'all lost me.
Asset furniture. Oh, that's funny. These buzzwords. So yes, asset management. I mean, when anyone says to me, would you like to talk about asset management? I'm like, sure, sit down. Do you have an hour? And my family still, my parents, I think, still don't know what I do. What is asset management? So I think the best way to describe, I think from our agency perspective, what we do, we have 78 asset classes within MnDOT. We have actually identified those asset classes. And it's not going to be like your computers, it's infrastructure assets that you see on the side of the roadway, which I have heard that term, but that's kind of an old term, Matt. Furniture.
Maybe that's why it threw me, because I'm just like, excuse me?
Yeah. So that's kind of, it's just those infrastructures on the side of the roadway that you see. And maybe it's like the DOT is a house and you have furniture in the house and you need to take care of your furniture. But so yes, it's really, really cool to see asset management is across kind of what I would consider the categories of asset management, which might help, is basically we do a lot of enterprise asset management, system development. We do a lot of the data analytics. So we're looking at budgeting. We're looking at life cycle planning. We're looking at like how to utilize the data for better decision making, condition data, inventory data, inspection data. And then we're also we have strategic program implementation. So, and I'll talk more about that, I think, later, but asset management is really doing the right thing at the right time to extend the life of assets.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
So the putting us back on track here a little bit. So in your day-to-day, in terms of the asset management office of the Department of Transportation in Minnesota, so what are some of the challenges that you're facing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, there's quite a few challenges. There's always resource challenges. When I was in maintenance, I still spend a lot of time in maintenance. I used to say, okay, let's write on the board, we don't have enough resources, kind of cross that off. Because that's probably something we're always constrained with. But I think, just kind of thinking about this from maybe a higher level perspective, our infrastructure continues to age. In Minnesota, we did have a bridge collapse situation. And I think having the bridge collapse made us, we did some systematic changes, I would say, some changes in general. And I think also nationally, there was some more money that's been designated, as well as in the world of resiliency, sustainability, I see, the IIJA funding. So there are resource options, but our aging infrastructure, American Civil Engineers, ASCE, gave us a report card a D. I just looked it up again because I was hoping we'd get improvements, American Society of Civil Engineers. So we're still at a D, dropping, and just we have a lot of infrastructure and it's aging. And then, as I mentioned, resiliency. So we have climate change happening. extreme weather events. We have warmer winters in Minnesota specifically, more ice storms, more droughts. We have trees like in downtown Minneapolis that are actually dying, some of our great parks, and then we'll have those floods, so drought, flood situation. So those are really challenging throughout the nation. And then data management, big data, what data do we need? What data should we be using? The granularity of the data, the sharing of the data, and again, that system integration, just really making sure that we're sharing data across systems and being the most efficient we can. And then the emerging technologies, just implementation. I think you don't ever have enough time really to be up on all the research, and I really like to be involved at a national level, doing things like this, sharing, communicating across DOTs as well as local level, but then getting those new ideas, those big ideas, and then implementing them in the agency can really take time and patience. So just keeping up on those innovations and emerging technologies.
Within your team, so how did you set the foundation for asset management? So what are some of the ways that this is happening?
Well, so I at least talk about it 3 times. They say anyone that can, get something implemented, you have to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. So I do think that communication is a big part of my job, as yours, right? And just talking about asset management, understanding what it is, understanding how prevalent it is across the agency. Even asset management is prevalent in equity choices. So where do we put potholes? Where do we decide to upgrade, a roadway system or add bike lanes? It's really prevalent across all parts of the agency, in construction, in design, what kind of data do we need? How are we going to use that data? So I really think just the prevalence of it, and setting up, I think, as our agency did, is to look at strategy, people, processes, tools. How can we look at each of those categories and say, let's just keep moving that bar of asset management? So through our TAMP, which is, again, I mentioned, our asset management plan, there's requirements within that plan that we need inventory data, condition data. We need to look at our 10-year investments for maintenance and capital. We also want to set performance measures and targets. Maybe I'm talking about things that some of the folks listening don't know about, but I think those are, in the world of asset management, those are specifically things you want to do to sort of set that foundation. And we have an asset management strategic implementation plan that we specifically called strategic implementation because we wanted it to be both looking ahead, kind of looking at all of our strategies across MnDOT, as well as how can we implement those strategies. And so doing that and getting that data, and also on the way engaging our stakeholders and understanding our stakeholder needs. Those stakeholders, again, it could be someone in the equity office, it could be someone in the bridge office, it could be somebody that's making programmatic decisions with culverts, but those stakeholders and what their needs are very important and something that we need to understand more. We've also done a lot of metrics. So I'm going to be speaking at a couple different conferences on some of our resiliency metrics, some of our maintenance performance measures. So how long does it take for us to fix traffic barrier in a certain roadway ADT, and what we want to look at there, and levels of service. So what does it cost and how can we improve a level of service, and what would that mean for investment? And then we've done a lot, Matt, in our enterprise asset management systems and tools. So we have a great enterprise asset management software that's integrated with like our financial information, our timesheets, our equipment, operations data, our snow and ice. Right now, I'm so excited. We're working on a project in which our, I call them automated vehicle information systems. They're getting the materials, they're getting the location of the snow plows, and that is creating, and again, we're just proof of concept here, but creating work orders within our enterprise asset management system. So we know where those plows are, we know the equipment that's being used, we know the cost, and it's very granular data. And so we can use that to just make better decisions and look at our, snow and ice costs, and again, that level of service. And then I love maps, I love GIS, so making sure that system, you can use it for mapping, use it for reporting, and then make sure that you give people access to the data.
I have you got that answer just spun off so many
tangents.
Off but I'm resisting the urge to go on too many of them. So I'm going to hold off for a minute.
You can. It's okay. It's all right.
No, I love it. I mean, the GIS, all of the information that you have, and this was something that dawned on me again. It was more for providing context for the listeners who maybe aren't used to this. We're talking about, at first I asked what is an asset when it regards to Department of Transportation, but also, so you're mentioning some projects that seem small on a one-off scenario, but I think that the context is to understand that it's about, so if you're finding an efficiency on replacing a piece of furniture,
yeah,
but yeah, it's the grand scale of the Department of Transportation. We're not talking about a singular school campus or a singular building or a single bridge.
Right.
It's talking about across the entire state. So the efficiencies that you find on a singular basis compound greatly and have a massive effect on your overall budget. Is that
Absolutely.
an accurate statement?
Accurate. And you know what? It's so hard when you're managing something at a network level. Like you're saying, we have network level management. So where are we when we look at state of good repair or a condition of one asset class? Now let's take that and let's look at every asset class across the agency, the funding that's distributed, and let's try to do trade-off decisions. What's the best scenario to manage pavements from a life cycle perspective? But then what if we put take $1 from pavements and put it into culverts? And how do those decisions impact sort of the condition of these assets and the investment overall and the budget?
Yeah, and the science that's coming into it is awesome too, because it's the moving away from reactive measures to proactive measures.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that asset management tool that you're utilizing helps you leverage those type of things.
Yes, absolutely. And people love dashboards. So if you give them a good dashboard, they are all about it, especially interactive dashboards.
Oh yeah. And more colors and blinking lights, the better.
If they can my kids always want to put an emoji on me. So we could put an emoji on Matt while you're doing this. Yeah.
That would be perfect. So before you mentioned the goal of better understanding the needs of internal stakeholders. So I want to kind of dig deeper into what that really entails.
Yeah, excellent. So I was thinking about this one. I'm we always understand what their needs are, but we don't always listen. No, that's not true.
We tell them what their needs are.
Yeah, we tell them what their needs are. That doesn't work out there, just by the way.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they do talk about informed consent, and there is some, you can't please everyone all the time, but it definitely you want to be listening to those stakeholders. So again, kind of getting back to what we talked about before, just the asset management key experts, the ones that need the data, that are looking to program the projects, and even our maintenance staff. So when we think about the asset life cycle, so just talking about that for a minute. So the asset information model, a lot of people talk about BIM, building information modeling. A lot of people are talking about 3D design, really important that we're moving towards. And I think you've done some shows on this already, Matt. But when you think about the life of the asset, kind of a little bit different perspective, just a little bit different lens. The life of the asset is maybe 50 years, maybe signal systems 30 years. That asset life might be in design construction twice. It might be 1 to 2 years of design construction, and the rest of it is in asset management. The rest of it is maintenance activities. The rest of it is looking at optimizing preventive maintenance, doing inspections. And so it's really important to think about what are those folks looking at? What do they need? As well as, again, like I said, on the programming side. But so maintenance, kind of end of the road users, these asset management experts that are saying, when we get an inspection result, how do we use it? What do we do? And so one thing that we've done kind of to better understand the whole system and our stakeholders is to do an asset management strategic implementation plan. I mentioned that before. And what does that mean? What did we do? It's all out there. I would like to just talk about our Minnesota TAM portal. So if you look up TAM, MnDOT, TAM portal, you'll be able to find a bunch of resources. It's we've been really transparent about this. I'm going to be videoing some people, just like we're doing now, about the benefits of asset management from their seat at MnDOT. We're going to be putting some videos out there. There's really cool one-pager one-pagers that basically say, like, why is asset management important to me in my chair, in my seat, and how can I kind of move the bar again in asset management. So we had this data action plan. We identified those 78 asset classes, and looking at the agency needs, looking at it from a perspective of what is the value of each of these asset classes and the data that we get, because it's really labor intensive to keep all this data up to date, keep the system up to date and use it. You want to use the data, but really how can we do that in a more efficient way? So we looked at, like, what is our desired approach for these assets? What are some things we can do? What are some things we cannot do? And literally, like, put that in front of the district, said, you know what, if you're thinking about, like, entrance culverts on, like, local driveways, we're not going to inventory those. It would take so much time and energy to do that. That is something we're going to say we're not going to do. We looked at the asset value, kind of like, what is the value of the asset? What are some of the mandates, the regulation, the risk? And we actually assigned sort of how we're going to manage the asset and what data does that mean. And again, down to like I'm saying with entrance culverts, we decided it's a minimum maintenance asset. We're not going to collect data on it. We're not going to inventory it. We are going to record maintenance work. So if we do maintenance work, we'll record it, but we're going to say, no, we can't do that. And so really that's kind of a piece of the question on the agency needs and what the agency can and can't do. And we've talked about right sizing. So not like downsizing, but saying we really need to say what's important, what are the priorities, what can we get done? And I know we've done this for years and years, but this is a great way to do it, I think, within the realm of asset management. And yeah, I think just really bringing those stakeholders in, and understanding the agency value and then the stakeholder value, how they use the data consumers, the reporting, the needs, and we documented this and kind of have outcomes, clear recommended outcomes for our senior leadership.
So you mentioned, obviously we just talked a lot about different stakeholders. And so I'm curious on the relationship between asset management and capital planning. So capital planning is, especially when we're talking about new construction, like you said, it's only a couple years out of an entire life cycle of that asset. But I'm more curious on, so we shift all the way to the end of an asset, so in terms of replacement and whatnot. How important is the asset management data and information and lessons learned and those things to influencing the capital planning team?
I mean, I think that's what it should be used for as well. So we know that we have performance targets to meet, like on our NHS roadways. We know for pavement and bridge, we have to meet certain targets. So we're always looking to do that. We're always saying, how can we do that? And if you look at our, what they call the STIP and CHIP, our programmed projects, we have our 6-year, we have our 10-year programmed projects. And how are you doing project selection? How are you taking the asset data, the condition data, the timing of these different, asset needs, and then turning those into projects? So we have a MnDOT plan, so the TAMP is a 10-year plan, capital investment needs, maintenance investment needs for 10 years. That is all based on asset management data, for sure. Then you go into our MnDOT, which is our 20-year capital only. And that plan as well, we've done as much as we can to really incorporate the models, running basically the management systems, the software to say, here's the outcome, here's what we need under these different scenarios. And so in our MnDOT, we look at these scenarios and say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe we're doing the same thing, maybe we're, increasing our performance target, we're making some changes, what are those investment levels? And it's all really using asset management data, deterioration models, maintenance management, or I should say bridge management, whatever system that you have. So it totally informs the capital decision making, as well as I think the programmatic. I would like to see more though, Matt, in a line sort of drawn, I say a straight line between what we've done in the TAMP and what our asset management strategies are and how we're specifically programming projects. But the problem is there's more to to life than just asset management. I hate to say that. I said that. But it's all about trade-off decisions. So there's more going on there. There's more to take into account, like safety, again, equity, sustainability, things that partially are asset management and partially are not. So really looking at the system as a whole.
So I've unintentionally left a segue here into the next topic. So you'd like to see this more maybe not obvious challenge that we have is our data silos. So you have asset management data silos, capital improvement data silos. You can go on and on and on and on. So what methods and technologies are you using to help mitigate some of those data silos for asset management?
Yeah, and one thing is just being here today, really saying the importance of asset management, the data. We want to provide data. We want to provide data for design, for surveying. We probably want to more get data from construction. We want to know the costs. We want to know that the asset, like when does it go live on the roadway? When is the furniture able to be sat in?
We're bringing it back.
I know, I have to. It's just so, this is it. So those are some things in the construction realm, I would say. And then construction kind of processes, material testing even. It would be great to take the material testing data, to take the pavement, let's say we're taking cores, we're doing sampling, we know the subgrade, we're doing thermo, like MnDOT's done a lot of like thermo profiling, and we can take that data and we can bring that into the asset management system. We can hold that data so that if we do have any data quality issues that we know they're there. So one big piece of this, I think, is communication and talking about the importance and what our needs are, I guess, from an asset management perspective, as well as really integrating, again, the asset management software. So providing data to design, providing data to construction, to surveying, I would say more or less, and like saving them time rather than going out, spending more time in the field, spending more time, doing these designs. We've gotten great data from LiDAR, from innovative LiDAR remote sensing, point cloud data that our surveyors just love. I mean, they just love. And our traffic barrier data, they did some, data quality assurance and found it's really accurate. And it can save a ton of time in the field. And it's dangerous being on the roads, getting even more dangerous all the time. So that's one thing, just, using that data, integrating it all the way through the life cycle. After the project is complete, we get that data back. We connect the dots, Matt, connected. And then the other big thing is show me the data, like use the data. So we're really trying to increase the data quality in our data and then use it for like maintenance planning, maintenance accomplishments. As I mentioned before, like better preventive maintenance. Should we be looking at our signal systems every year, every 2 years? What should our inspection timelines be, and all of that data kind of being in our enterprise asset management software. And then we've also done a lot of data analytics for, I don't know if you've heard this before, but we get reimbursed. So if you hit like a sign, don't drive away. If you hit a sign, and you have insurance, right, we try to get reimbursed for fixing that sign. And so we've done a lot on what we call the damage restitution front. And that also has kept our data pretty accurate. But in Minnesota, we have obviously a lot of people hitting furniture, and we need to track the costs of that, repair. And then again, I mentioned like scoping and programming, just really providing the data, looking at in those data consumers and how we can better do that.
I had a tangent, but I'm pulling it back. We're running out of time, so
I
need
no.
to.
What?
Yeah, can you believe it?
I can't.
We wanted to hit upon resilience and sustainability. So you talked about it briefly before. So when you think about resilience and sustainability, how does that fit into with your asset management program today, and even what you see down the road?
Yeah, and how are we going to do things differently? Because these challenges are there; they're here already. Hear from other states like Florida and what they've gone through. So in Minnesota, it's specifically kind of about our winters. They're warming 13 times faster than our summers. So a lot more ice. And as I mentioned before, a lot more drought, flood conditions. So I think we're going to really have to say, and in asset management specifically, it's like a Venn diagram. So if you look at bridges, culverts, pavement, it's impacting those assets, right? It's changing like some of our strategies that we're doing. So what we're trying to do, and we do have this IIJA funding in Minnesota, which will be roughly $23 million a year. We're partnering with our local folks to really look at that funding scenario, and we're trying to plan. So any good strategy, any good implementation takes a good plan. And so right now we're doing resiliency improvement planning, which says what are those assets that are most impacted in Minnesota? What are the risks, the vulnerabilities, and then what is our current state of practice, and how can we like mitigate or make some changes? So really working through that process right now, and then looking at when we have STIP-CHIP ready projects, what are some pieces that maybe we weren't going to do and we might decide to upgrade and use some of this funding. I think we're at the early stages of this, and other states that I've heard from and seen have had a lot more they've seen these extreme weather events and they've been in it. So I think learning from each other to what we can do. But I heard people are moving to Duluth. They like Duluth, Minnesota. So have to be ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah. They must be craving. Well, maybe they've heard it's warming up. So why the heck not?
Yep. There you go.
It's the Mediterranean climate that's rolling in.
Right. They like the water. Yeah.
So, all right. So here's our last question. Question I ask every one of our guests. So it's on the assumption that you have your own personal motto. That's a big leap to think that everybody that everybody has their own personal motto. So if you don't have one, that's okay. What is a motto that you've heard that is a good life lesson to live by?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Definitely, we want to keep taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. We all do. And if you do make a mistake, I mean, my 5-year-old and 8-year-old will tell me, but I will admit, yes, mom made a mistake. And we all just need to, we can't be perfect. I mean, Matt, you and I are really close. So it's just really, it's hard.
We can't let people live up to those standards. I mean, come on.
Yes. But I think that would be it, right? Don't be afraid to make a mistake and just keep moving
really
forward.
like that, because I find in several organizations that I've been a part of, you're trying to design a solution to a problem. And sometimes you get into this and especially when it comes into group collaboration, that you end up taking too long trying to find the most optimal, greatest solution ever.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, the time that you're taken to try to figure it out, things have gotten worse.
Yes, yeah.
I believe there are multiple solutions to every problem. None of them are going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
Pick one and go.
Right.
And then iterate on it and make it and start to make it as perfect as possible. So I love that.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation, a way too quick conversation, but fantastic nonetheless. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was really fun.
And everybody out there listening in, watching us on YouTube, or wherever it is that you catch us, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay connected.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Construction Show. For more information, visit us at connectedconstructionshow.com.